the balance is really looking at the calorie content. How much are you doing, especially if you're not very physically active? And the problem sometimes is that people eat more when they're tired, and most people in many ethnic minority groups work a lot, they work long hours, so they eat more, but actually they're not physically doing more. They're not having time to exercise. So what then happens is that you're taking in extra calories that you need, and that then becomes a problem with your weight. The stats about the weight for men is that if your waistline is above 36 inches, you're actually at higher risk of developing a cardiovascular problem.
Hello there, it's me again, Kiki, and this episode we're going to be looking at some aspects of men's health, and we will be starting with stroke and how it affects the men. For that, I've got with me a very gentleman, Ade Williams.
Hello, Kiki.
Yeah, Ade is an independent prescriber and a lead pharmacist at the multi-award-winning Bedminster Pharmacy in Bristol. He's here with me today and he's going to be telling us more about himself.
Hello,
Hi,
Kiki.
Ade.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming all the way. I know how long you drove to be here.
Hello, it's a pleasure.
I'm so honored. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us a bit more about yourself?
So, I'm, as you mentioned, I'm a pharmacist. I'm a pharmacist independent prescriber. My pharmacy team and I have been pioneering some different ways of engaging with people. We're very proactive. For that, we've won a few awards. So one of the things I carry at the moment is I'm presently the Pharmacist of the Year for 2018 as well. I also have roles as well, working with the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, helping to raise awareness about the work the pharmacists do and pharmacy teams do in the community. I'm a fellow of that society as well for distinction in the practice of pharmacy.
Okay, so like we said earlier on, we're going to be talking about some aspects of men's health, and today we're starting with stroke. What is stroke? What is
stroke? That's a good point. So stroke is the loss of oxygen and nutrients to the brain. So it's actually cutting off the blood supply to the brain. It happens because of two particular reasons. You have a particular arteries. Arteries carry blood to organs, and veins take them away. And the arteries that take blood to the brain sometimes can get blocked. They can have blood clots that stop the blood getting to the brain. Another thing that sometimes causes this is where you have a blood vessel in the brain that erupts as well. When one of the arteries erupts, and then you lose blood supply in there, you also have bleeding in the brain as well.
So what causes all of this?
What causes all of this? Now, there are some genetic factors that we are aware of. Realistically, for a population, what you tend to do whenever you're looking at health is you look at some things that are modifiable and some things that are not modifiable. So when we talk about the modifiable things, or we look at things like your weight. If you're overweight, you're more at risk of having a stroke. If you're Afro-Caribbean, you are more at risk of having a stroke, and that is particularly linked because there is also evidence that shows that people from African or Afro-Caribbean background have a tendency to have higher blood pressure, a lot of the time undiagnosed as well. So if you think about your blood pressure like as a water hose, if the pressure in that hose keeps building up, at some point it erupts. And that eruption is the stroke. Also, if you have a diabetes, you'll have a higher risk as well of developing a stroke as well. Drinking excessively and not exercising enough. All the things that we keep hearing about, and really are some of the modifiable factors that increase your risk of developing a stroke.
Okay, now you said more in Afro-Caribbean background, right?
Yeah.
Why is that?
That's a good question. Why are we not? Now, it's something that has baffled scientists for a while. I think a lot of the time, really, particularly when it relates to stroke, the issue around it tends to be the blood pressure. Blood pressure itself, we believe that about 1 in 3 people that have high blood pressure in the UK are not diagnosed. Now, usually for ethnic minority groups across the board, that's even higher. Why? Because blood pressure tends to be sometimes you have no symptoms. So because you have no symptoms of it, you go about having a high blood pressure. And the only time it causes a problem is actually when something goes wrong. And, and heaven forbid what goes wrong is a stroke. And then you have it. So we know that there's some genetic disposition as well to high blood pressure in Afro-Caribbean people. We also know that the rates of picking them up and screening them is not as good as other people in the general population as well. And that's because over the age of 40, from 40 to 74, the NHS offers something that's called a free health check. And every 5 years, you're supposed to come in and they check your blood pressure, they check your cholesterol. And we have found that a lot of people in those minority groups tend to be less likely to turn up, especially men. The two men, they're hustling, they're trying to take care of their family. They don't, and they feel well. And I think that's the problem with it, is that you feel well, you don't. Also, we're not very good with our family history when it comes to health. Somebody dies, they go, he's died. What happened? No, nobody knows. So you don't have a traditional or culture of sharing health information that lets people to know that, oh, your dad had high blood pressure, your uncle had a stroke, so be careful. So you tell you don't do that there. And I think the other thing that sometimes does happen as well is that some of our diets are very high in salt content, and the high salt content unfortunately can contribute to high blood pressure as well. And the high blood pressure, of course, then contributes to the stroke.
Thank you for not saying carbs. Because that's what everybody says.
Well, the message around carbs is really one of trying to look at what the balance is. And I think the balance is really looking at the calorie content. How much are you doing, especially if you're not very physically active. And the problem sometimes is that people eat more when they're tired. And, most people in many ethnic minority groups work a lot, they work long hours, so they eat more. But actually, they're not physically doing more. They're not having time to exercise. So what then happens is that you're taking in extra calories that you need. And that then becomes a problem with your weight. And the stats about the weight for men is that if your waistline is above 36 inches, you're actually at higher risk of developing a cardiovascular problem.
Where's my husband's weight line?
Oh dear, you're gonna stick him on a diet now.
Of course.
Oh no, what have I done?
But my husband is very good with diets. In fact, he monitors me. He monitors mine. So yeah. But again, I want to ask. So now, talking about the fact that I know you're not a fitness coach, but how do we find we are men, or sometimes we rarely have time, for this exercises and all of this. What would you say are the barest minimum that we can do?
I think one of the biggest problems is that there's a group of us, and I think I've been guilty of this, that pay into gym memberships, they stay in our wallet or comes out in our diet. It comes every January, goes, we've funded sports clubs, but we've never turned up. And I think one of the things we need to do is to be realistic. And I think what does that mean is there are some ways, that you can actually increase your physical activity that doesn't necessarily need to cost you more money. One thing that could be very helpful is to go and get a Fitbit. Great technology. You can look at how much steps you're taking, look at the calories. It helps you can set targets as well. And what does it do? It means that you start to make choices when you're going into, because you got a target of 10,000 steps today. When you go into the supermarket or you're at work, you decide to use the staircase instead of the lift.
Yeah.
Because you got a target, you get up from work, you think, okay, it's my lunch break, I'm going to just, 10 minutes and walk around.
Yeah.
That's a very easy way. That's sustainable as well. It's very habit forming. The other thing that is also very good in terms of that is to not to look at your diet in terms of just trying to use it as a fad, but looking at it and actually thinking, what should I be eating more of? Fruits and veg, drinking more water is very key as well in terms of that as well. If you drink alcohol as well, being conscious of what is the recommended limit and staying within that. Certainly, smoking never gives anybody any benefit, and I think that's something today that if you find yourself that it's a habit that you have, seek help to try and quit it, because there is no there. So there are those things that you can do. Look as well into frying your food, trying to maybe look at cutting out deep frying, looking at maybe air fryers as well and grilling things. But it's those sort of changes that makes your diet better, makes you yourself feel better. And the good thing about increasing your physical activity, it makes you feel better as well, and you look better.
I agree with you. And well, I'll just add to the tips Ade is giving. Help out in the kitchen.
Yes, that's good. Yeah.
Because in the kitchen you move around a lot. And another tip is take a walk with your loved ones.
And do your housework. Do the hoovering. It's amazing. If you do the hoovering and cleaning, you burn out almost 1,000 calories.
Exactly.
You can listen to music, you can dance. It's the only thing you can do when you're dancing around to yourself and those around you ignore you because they're just happy you're doing it. So put on headphones, do your hoovering and spin around. Yes.
Okay, so stroke, when it happens, is there any form of recovery, physical recovery?
There is. And there is something that is very important. There's a little acronym that we have for stroke, which is called FAST, the F-A-S-T. And what it is that if the first thing it talks about is the first symptom of a stroke. If somebody is the face, you sometimes see that the face, one side of it seems to have dropped, the eyes may have dropped, the lips may have dropped as well. Those are common features of that, is where somebody cannot, they say that actually I don't feel the side of my face. The other one that comes out as well is the arms as well. The person is unable to raise the two arms because usually one of them is very weak, keeps dropping down. They have no response to it, so they're not able to. The other one as well is S, which is for the speech. And what happens is the person sounds quite inaudible, they are babbling, they cannot form their words as well. Sometimes when you speak to them, they're not responding. The last one is time. And what that is really is to say, if you see somebody there, you need to act very quickly. You need to call 999 and think, I think this person has had a stroke. Because the earlier they can get medical attention, the quicker it is, the better the outcome is going to be for them. Okay. In terms of how the rehabilitation works, when you get into hospital, what they will try and do is to find out whether it's one of the two things that's happened there, whether it's the hemorrhaging, which is the blood vessel that has erupted, or it's a clot, and they will then look at the processes to try and alleviate either of them to limit the damage that can cause. The other one that is also worth mentioning is that some people have what is called a transient stroke. So they have a passing thing. So for a few minutes, they have all of those symptoms, and then they seem to get back again. And for those ones, that is actually quite important that they see their doctor, because the transient stroke can be a precursor, it can be a warning that there's a big stroke coming. So, and there are tests that you can do, there are blood tests that you can do that can say you've had a mini stroke. So we can now do something to prevent a major stroke as well.
So if you feel at some point you couldn't speak properly, or you couldn't
losing strength in your arms,
or your face,
your speech, or your face,
not the way it used to be,
it's what
act on time.
That's it. Yes.
Don't wait for anybody. No. Act on time. Even if you feel okay, I'm good, just go for the check.
Yeah, if you see somebody, pressure them. You're saving a life.
Okay. So now, finally, on stroke, how can we reduce the risk?
How can we reduce the risk? I think one of the things is to make sure that, particularly for men, we're checking our blood pressure. We need to do that, especially if you're in one of the at-risk ethnic groups, minority groups in particular. If you have diabetes, if you know that your weight is higher than what it should be, you're at a greater risk. So check it. Do something about the weight, but keep checking it as well. If you have a family history of cardiovascular problems, certainly look at reducing your alcohol consumption if you drink. Look at the same point as well of giving up smoking if you do smoke as well. And I think the other thing that is what also doing is actually also, particularly for men, increasing awareness. Letting people know what stroke is. Stroke is the leading cause of disability, and I think that's the worst part of it. It's not that you can survive, but then you are left with a disability, and that the loss of income, the pressure of your family having to care for you, and we know that many patients that have a stroke also go through really bad bouts of low mental health as a result of that, because you feel as if your dignity and your person has been locked. Yeah. And I think, we can do something. But the good thing is that the rehabilitation that is available is there. And one other thing I would say, if you're taking blood pressure medications, keep taking them. Don't stop, and go for your regular appointments as well. I think those are some of the things that really we find that really lets us down, is where we are not taking the medications, we're not going to check that it's working, and we just assume that everything is okay.
Yeah. And then you mentioned earlier on exercising, doing physical activities, and watching your diet. So that means our diet got a key role to play.
That's got a key role.
It
has got a key role. And I think, sometimes, like in every society, in every culture, there are things that we do that we've always done, and some of it may not be as healthy because we're not as active as we used to do when it was passed over to us.
Yeah.
So I think what we do is we modify our life, modify the diet. You can have the same things, but you don't have to deep fry it anymore, or make the deep frying the treat, not something that you have every single day there. And I think it's just
growing up, my mom would say that my grandfather would have pounded yam every day. But yeah, that's a good one. But then he goes to farm every
single day. So
he does the farm work, and after the farm work, his treat is that. So like you said, the lifestyle has changed. So modify what you do. It doesn't have to be the way it used to be. That's a very quick one. But thank you very much, Ade. It's loaded. One thing I want to add to what Ade said, he said, check your blood pressure regularly. There is this blood pressure monitor that is sold on Amazon. I think it costs less than £12.
There is. You can also get free ones done in your GP surgery, your pharmacist. You can go in and ask for it. They can interpret it for you.
Yeah.
And you can do things to improve your blood pressure as well. So don't be scared that once you have high blood pressure, medications, no. You can be a wake-up call. And I think ultimately, it's better to be woken up about the condition than to be woken up about a stroke.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
No problem at all.